Hello, and welcome to Straight Talk about PTSD's orientation presentation number 3. This presentation is about effective, comprehensive trauma treatment. We talked last time about how common it actually is for a person with chronic PTSD to also have additional comorbid mental and physical health conditions. Such comorbidities are simply a natural and nearly universal part of the PTSD landscape. For example, one study on Vietnam veterans with PTSD done almost 15 years after that conflict ended found that 98.8% had at least one other mental health condition along with their PTSD. Given this reality, effective comprehensive PTSD treatment must also embrace the treatment of common relevant comorbidities and their mutual underlying causes. Equally as important, usable and truly relevant PTSD treatment research cannot exclude treatment subjects with these common comorbidities. Now, common comorbid conditions associated with PTSD or a significant trauma history include the following: depression, substance abuse, eating disorders, non-substance addictions, for example, gambling and sexual addictions, panic symptoms and generalized anxiety symptoms, mild traumatic brain injury, attention deficit and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, learning disabilities, sleep and nightmare disorders, social anxiety disorder, insecure attachment styles and behaviors, relationship problems, dissociative disorders, chronic and psychogenic pain, which means present pain being intensified by additional pain coming from triggered pain memories. Even high-risk behaviors like reckless driving and unsafe sexual practices, and physical disorders such as cancers, strokes, diabetes, obstructive sleep apnea, and lung diseases are highly comorbid with PTSD. That comes to over 16 million possible combinations of comorbid conditions, each making the other worse, and which need to be treated together. To make matters even more complicated, once any experience-based, memory-driven belief system and world picture have evolved and solidified, and especially when based in trauma, the low-road brain, and the safety and survival priorities, any real, deep, or important change involves periods of considerable resistance. Hey, you're messing with how I survive. Also, any real, deep, or important change also involves confusion. If not all men or women are abusive, then why do I keep ending up with those who are, and what else am I doing wrong? What changes do I need to make, and how do I make them? With any real significant change, adjustment periods characterized by intense emotional and intellectual instability and confusion are normal. They're just an essential part of the change process itself, and they have to be tolerated, even embraced, and certainly need to be negotiated successfully before new changes can become fully established. And that process simply takes time and will not occur on a standardized schedule. Now, the so-called scientific evidence base for PTSD treatments simply refers to the existing body of statistically based research evidence about PTSD treatment which has been published in a professional scientific journal. The studies which make up this scientific evidence base, however, almost never allow high comorbidity subjects to participate. That is, subjects similar to the vast bulk of real human beings with real PTSD are being excluded. Furthermore, the studies that make up this scientific evidence base almost never involve the longer-term treatments where the repair of insecure attachment or where deep psychological changes are even possible. Also, this evidence base almost never includes those treatment studies where the treatment didn't exactly work out as hoped or where subjects even got worse instead of better. Now, such studies do indeed exist, but rarely are they submitted to or published by scientific journals. I mean, who wants to be known by their peers as a failure at something that other people have claimed success at? Thus, failed studies are often not included in the official scientific evidence base. On top of all this, the actual amount of improvement needed to declare research significance and thus enter in the hallowed halls of scientific facthood in the evidence base are also sometimes quite small and often reflect clinically insignificant and short-lived changes. Scientific research, as currently practiced, demands that the exact same treatment conditions, treatment scripts, and treatment protocols be used for everyone in the study, each of whom has exactly the same diagnosis. Individualization of treatment and the treatment of comorbid conditions is generally not allowed. But then again, how many human beings have exactly the same history, exactly the same symptoms, combinations of comorbidities, and treatment needs? Next to none. The scientific method, as currently applied to PTSD treatment research, does not search for common causes of multiple comorbid conditions, nor address treatments focused on mutual, deeper, underlying causes. It is by and large restricted to a single definable condition at a time and a single standardized treatment at a time. Science deals with details and inflexible conditions. What is needed in high comorbidity PTSD treatment is flexibility and the recognition of the bigger picture and the underlying causes. Unfortunately, the so-called scientific evidence base for treating PTSD is driven primarily by the desire of government agencies, the academic and professional researchers they hire or give contract monies and research grants to, and of insurance companies to only validate the use or promote the use of inexpensive, short-term, manualized treatments, one condition, one script. The government won't study or pay for research on the longer and more expensive individualized treatments that also cover comorbid conditions or which require more experienced and expensive providers. The government does not want to validate anything expensive or time-consuming as being superior to or even as effective as its preferred Band-Aid treatments. If the government did and end up validating these longer and more expensive treatments, it would then have to provide it and they'd have to pay for better treatment. Don't look for what you do not want to find. Now, I will be addressing these issues with the evidence base in greater depth in a future Straight Talk about PTSD presentation. Now, my own professional experience has been clear. Substantial healing and repair of PTSD and post-traumatic attachment issues is possible. It can be done. But in my experience, such healing is most likely to occur and then endure following specific treatment components, but only when those specific treatment components are delivered in an individualized fashion within a long-term therapeutic relationship with a competent, well-trained, and experienced clinician. Further, once again, these individual treatment components and the longer-term therapeutic relationship are not the short-term manualized components preferred by academic mental health training institutions, government agencies, and insurance companies. So, what do I consider, on the basis of my experience and my reading, to be essential to effective and enduring healing from attachment and other trauma? First, always start treatment with an orientation, information gathering, and information giving phase. This can really help people understand what's going on with themselves and their loved ones. People who get the what and the why of PTSD and the variety of normal PTSD adaptations that make up PTSD and the essentials of comprehensive PTSD treatment are, in my experience, more likely to commit to quality treatment and stick with it long enough for real change to occur and become an integral part of their daily thought process, their emotions, their behavior, and their relationships. Now, after orientation is substantially done, I would absolutely positively recommend individualized neurofeedback come next. Individualized neurofeedback focuses upon the retraining and normalizing of the dysfunctional brainwave patterns that are at the core of the post-traumatically adapted brain. We need to undo whatever we can of trauma's natural negative effects on the brain. Individualized neurofeedback is, in my experience and according to the admittedly limited research on the subject, by far the most effective and enduring means of calming the hyper-aroused and hypofrontal post-traumatically adapted brain. It is also the most effective and enduring means of reversing the trends towards inefficient thinking, ineffective learning, shallow and fragmented sleep, poor emotional tolerance and control, and stunted emotional connection to other people that are so common in chronic PTSD. Neurofeedback essentially prepares the brain for efficient learning, for flexibility, for calming, for connecting emotionally with others, and for psychotherapy. Neurofeedback increases our potential for healing tremendously. One more point. PTSD and similar post-traumatic adaptation syndromes, again, are experience-based adaptations. Since experience becomes memory, and memory drives adaptation, PTSD is essentially memory created, memory maintained, and memory driven. PTSD and insecure attachment memories are overwhelmingly images. Visual, physical sensations, sound, vibration, emotions, smells, tastes. They're images. Since the memories which drive and maintain post-traumatic adaptations are imagery rather than words or intellectual thoughts, imagery-based and imagery-rich healing psychotherapy, done however long it's needed, is the most effective means I know of for repairing attachment problems, alleviating the distress of flashbacks and nightmares, increasing our capacity to sleep, and exercising and building our ability for emotional connections with others and for emotional control. I would add that these adaptation driving and brain tuning memory images are absolutely unique to each individual who has them. Nobody, not even twins raised by the same parents who went to the same schools together, have exactly the same set of memory images as someone else. This reality simply does not lend itself to or mesh with the lockstep, one script for everybody approach to treatment demanded by treatment researchers and favored by government agencies who are wanting 12-session group cures for PTSD, or insurance companies wanting to keep your money from your premiums for themselves. A long-term psychotherapeutic relationship is also essential for healing from post-traumatic adaptations. A strong therapeutic relationship helps an individual feel safe enough to confront what needs confronting, share what needs sharing. A quality, stable therapeutic relationship also allows for the natural periods of resistance, confusion, and instability during change to be tolerated, facilitated, safely worked through, so that healing changes can occur and be adequately consolidated, made a part of who you are. And frankly, these things simply take more time than brief therapies allow for. Spiritual issues are also frequently woven into the fabric of PTSD. Spiritual issues concern one's intimate relationship with oneself, with others, the larger world, and with one's God or higher power. Spiritual issues also include such phenomena as forgiveness, answering the question, what kind of God allows evil things to be done to the innocent? Moral injury, when we or those we're with violate our moral code. Spirituality also involves guilt of various types. But, to me, spirituality, above all else, can lend tremendous strength and courage for facing and doing in therapy and in life what needs facing and doing. I strongly recommend viewing Dr. David Tharp of Project Healing Heroes' future presentations and joint presentations on this channel, and consider checking out Project Healing Heroes' website. The link to projecthealingheroes.org will be listed below in the description. As you're probably realizing by now, effective, comprehensive treatment for post-traumatic insecure attachment, PTSD, and their comorbid conditions is neither cheap, easy, or quick. That's why the VA doesn't want to research it or provide it, and insurance companies frequently don't want to have to pay for it. It does take tremendous commitment, courage, investment, and perseverance on the part of all concerned. The client, family members, the therapist, friends, etc. It takes sufficient neurofeedback, and it takes a primary therapist who's both trustworthy and skilled in the use of reparative healing imagery. In my experience, healing simply won't come in a boxed manual with paint-by-numbers, predetermined steps and stages. Healing is not a one-size-fits-all process. The therapy process, and therapy means healing, by the way, the therapy process needs to be as individual as the history, the memories, and the adaptation and comorbidity patterns of each human being who undertakes it. One of Project Healing Heroes' upcoming web pages, Ptsd University, will be dedicated to the training of mental health professionals in our brain change, memory, therapeutic relationship, and reparative imagery model of PTSD and its treatment. As a part of Ptsd University, we intend to post the names and contact information for professionals completing adequate levels of training in our model if they so desire. Although it's aimed at professionals, Ptsd University's somewhat more technical presentations will be free for you to view as well if you simply want to know more about the issues we brought up here and what the research is concerning the subject I've spoken about. The foregoing 3 straight talk about PTSD orientation presentations are really only a brief outline of the conclusions I've reached about trauma, its natural consequences, and its treatment. I invite viewers to submit any questions or requests for clarification on any subject or point I've mentioned via the link that I'll be providing below. Also, please feel free to ask questions or pose comments about subjects I have yet to mention or ones you'd like me to address. Feel free to disagree, demand more explanation, etc. Ultimately, it is your questions and your feedback which will determine the content of our future presentations. I do want to add one caveat. While I invite your questions, nothing I could provide via YouTube would ever realistically be an appropriate substitute for the guidance of a local, committed, and skilled trauma-savvy psychotherapist. I am simply too uncomfortable doing individualized psychotherapy by YouTube to even try to address any extremely situation-specific, extremely personal questions that are best posed to your therapist who knows you and your situation better than I ever will. Now, if you subscribe and you hit the notification bell icon below, you're going to be notified of future presentations from Straight Talk About PTSD as they are posted. This whole project is about healing for those who suffer from attachment and other trauma, and for those who care about them. Healing just goes so much more smoothly and efficiently when clients and their loved ones understand what's going on and how and why the specific treatments being recommended here fit into the overall healing process. There may be some point in the future where you have the option to donate to Straight Talk About PTSD. I may in the future add a button for donations, but I have not done so at this point. I hope these Straight Talk About PTSD orientation presentations have made good sense to you and will prove helpful in your journey to a higher quality life. And finally, again, your questions and your feedback will serve as a basis for our future presentations. We'll see you then.